What's going on, everybody? Today we're gonna do some live sourcing. We're gonna try to find profitable books on eBay and Amazon to flip back on Amazon. So I'm super excited to do this. We're gonna use a tool called Flipmine. We're gonna start off with a little bit of Keep a Product Finder today. Usually been looking at the deals page recently, but we're gonna see if we can find something potentially with a product finder. So I think that would be super interesting. And we already got some people in the house. Let's go, Chris. Good morning. Good to see you, man. Let's jump over. Let me share my screen and let's get started. If you're someone who's just watching the recording a little bit later, you can probably skip about a minute ahead before when we get right into sourcing. All right, let's see. Let's see this. All right, there we are. And let's go over to this right there. All right. Let's see who else we got here. Flipping with Cisco. Good to see you, man. Love starting my Saturday morning with you, Joji. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for the kind words. I'm looking forward to the Doughboys podcast this week. That's going to be super fun. Super excited for that. Hey, Rose, how's it going? Good to see you. Let's go ahead and jump right into doing some sourcing. All right. So, over there. Awesome. All right. So, we're going to use a combination of Flipmine. We're also going to use some Keep a Product Finder as well. So, I think let's just start off with, I always like starting off with Flipmine because Flipmine is a software that's going to help find books on eBay that you can flip on Amazon. And any new inventory that pops up is stuff that you want to look at because that has potential to be worth something. So I'm going to go and open up a couple of these things. Here are my conditions or my parameters I'm setting. Used books, sales rank less than 2 million, profit greater than 25. And that's how I like to look at stuff. So we'll see. So $31 for the spacecraft book plus $4 shipping. So it'd be all in like 35. We go over to Amazon. Looks like it's about $28. So probably not. Okay. But if you look kind of in the last 30 days, this has been selling for right around $60, which is cool. It has even sold a little bit more than that. Probably a lot of those were in new condition, although the used offer count actually did drop there. So a couple of sales in the $80 range. I would say conservatively, though, this thing is, I mean, it has had periods of time where it's less than 20, which is a little bit concerning. And you can kind of see that offer count's starting to go up a little bit, which is also not a good thing. That means more people are selling the book. We should expect the price of that book to come down a little bit. But in the past, it has sold for some pretty good money. So what I'd want to do for a book like this is see what sort of track history does it have over the last like decade. This thing came out in 1978. So notice that with the offer count, it's kind of historically been pretty low. And when it has been in stock, it looks like it's kind of been selling pretty quickly. So this is something that definitely has been cheaper than what we can buy it for right now on eBay. So this is something I would probably set a tracker for. We go back to 2020. It looks like this thing was holding strong right around like 30 to 50. So this is very variable. This would be a great book to track. So there's 7 people tracking this book right now. I think this would be an awesome book to track because, you know, like let's say you're tracking this book for $12 and you got a notification right here. You could have picked up a couple copies, and there's so many opportunities where you could have sold this for 30 plus. So I think I'm going to set a tracker for like 15 on this. I think that would probably be a good tracker. And this has been selling since 1978. So definitely this has some value. And we got some people in the chat. How's it going? What's up, Scott? Thanks for being here. What's up, Josh? How's it going, man? We got Denise joining, and we got AC Flips in the house as well. Thanks for being here, Alex. Everyone go check out both Cisco. So here's Cisco up here. He's got a YouTube channel. He's putting out some great shorts, by the way. AC Flips doing some traditional online arbitrage. I go watch some of his videos as well. So go check those dudes out. All right, let's keep going. So this spacecraft book, I think you could still send an offer. Like you could still be profitable. I think if you were to buy it, you'd probably have to send an offer for like $18 or something. You'd want to get it definitely at a price that's kind of where the lowest used price has been in the last year. Like I mentioned, a lot of people are flipping this for like in the $50 to $60 range. So like, you know, if you were to flip it for 60, you'd probably want to be all in at like 25 most, honestly. So I think there's going to be periods of time in the future where it's possible that it could be as cheap as my tracker. So I'm just going to track it. But, and you know, here's another example. This is something that is a bid opportunity. So obviously it's that same book and they're starting off really low. I would highly doubt that this is going to end very cheaply, but it could. The reason why I say I highly doubt it is because the sales rank of this book is actually pretty good, which means a lot of people are, you know, have eyes on it. So, but you know, this guy has it for 24 or best offer. You can see it's kind of beat up, which is probably why he's got it for so cheap. So that's something that I would want to stay away from. Although that's just the dust jacket, and actually looks like the hardcover itself is in pretty good condition. So maybe I might reconsider that. Let's see what else. And what I would do is, looks like there's a ton of offers on eBay, is just sort by the lowest first and see what we got. Yeah, it looks like you have a bid opportunity, and then, I mean, this is definitely something that you could probably send an offer on, and they might accept it depending on how long it's been up there. Booked for ages. So I don't know. It's like a bigger seller, but I would be all in for this book at 15 for sure. So I'm just gonna go ahead, and looks like it's in good condition. Is there any condition notes down here? Doesn't look like there's anything that's too crazy here. So I'm just like, this is something that I would definitely feel comfortable buying. So if my computer will let me send an offer here, let's go. So I'll send an offer for 15. I would doubt that they're gonna take that. It's probably gonna be auto denied, but it's okay. There's tons of books out there that people will accept an offer on. All right, this next one looks like a Bible. Yeah, 62 bucks. Let's go over to Amazon. Looks like it's sold new for 69. So right off the bat, I don't think there's going to be any margin with this book. Kind of interesting, when Amazon goes out of stock, there might be a little bit of an inflated price, although it doesn't really look like it sells too much. So there's just no margin on that. There's no way we'd be able to make money. All right, we got Eric in the house. Good morning. Let's go. Thanks for being here, Eric. We got Seagal in the house. I'm back. Hello, it's good to see you. I know it's been a while since I've seen you around. Love your short videos. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a few days since I've made one. I started school back up, which has been a little bit crazy. So I got to get some more of that out. But let's see if there's anything else that looks interesting. This clone book is a very expensive book apparently, and this looks interesting. And maybe let's just look at that, and then we can move on over to Product Finder. I love looking at really expensive books that are on eBay, because on Amazon, they're probably also very expensive. It looks like it's actually cheaper on Amazon, but this is something to potentially track. Now, why is this? So notice that the used price at one point got all the way up to $43,000, which is why the used line looks like it's on the ground. So all I'm going to do is use my cursor to get rid of that. So then now it makes a little bit more sense. Now, obviously, it wasn't selling when it was up to $500. We don't see sales rank dropping. Now, if we take a look at when this book does seem to be selling, it's probably around the $30 range. So if you wanted this book to be profitable, you'd probably need to pick it up during times like this when the price is down to like $8, because like I said, it does historically sell for about 30 to 40. And one thing that I'm also looking at is how offer count changes. I think in many ways, for books that have high sales rank, that offer count changing often is probably a little bit better of an indicator of how many copies sold and how often it sells. So I think this is probably something that could move up to 30. So if you wanted to pick up this book and track it, there's only 2 people tracking it. And I think if you were to track it for like $5 or $6, you can make money, because it does look like it sells for about 30. So for me, I like to sell books that are a little bit more valuable than that and would sell a little bit more often. So I'm not going to track it. But with that said, if that book ever gets to $6, you could totally pick that up and probably flip for like 30. The Magic of Fire. I've actually purchased this book on July 1st. Okay, interesting. So it looks like a $69, and that's probably right around what this thing is worth. So again, not really worth picking up, but I picked this up on July 22nd, so we can see what I paid. I probably paid like $40 for this, which is maybe like a little bit undervalued. I guess when I was looking at this, it was selling for close to 100 or even over 100. So that's probably why I picked it up. And wow, so you can see in the past, it actually has sold up to $200 as well. So probably why I decided to pull the trigger on. I don't remember if I've actually sold it yet. I could click this little orders button, but then it would go to my storefront and everything. So I'm going to pass on that right now. I think it's a little bit overvalued. Developing oral skills, a workbook. So we'd have to spend 38. It looks like this is a multiple. It's like there's multiple books there. So let's see. Where is that listing at? Right here. Over to the Amazon page, $17. So obviously it's cheaper on Amazon. So maybe this is an Amazon to Amazon flip. Wow, this is really interesting. Now, the thing that we had to figure out is this a 4-book set? It kind of looks like it, but there's also no like information below, which is not ideal. And there's no reviews either. So I'm not really sure. I would assume that it comes with 4 of these, but why I think this is so interesting is that the used price of this book has been so high over the last year, and the sales rank has dropped, indicating that it has sold either in new or used condition, either of which would have been insane, over $100. And if we go back into time, even though it has at periods of time, like here looks like it sold for 35, it looks like it has definitely sold for well over 100 before. And in the past, going back to 2019, it looks like it was selling for maybe 35 or 40. But today, right, boom, this thing dropped on Amazon from 197 all the way down to 17 bucks. So definitely, this is from Glenn, the bookseller, who tends to do this a ton. So the question is, I don't know, does this come with everything? I would highly doubt it does, in which case it wouldn't be that great of a deal because you'd have to just return it. So this one would be a bit of a gamble, honestly. I think it would sell eventually. Like, notice that offer count drops quite a bit here, and also, it sold at least 5 times, but offer count also dropped back here in May as well, which probably were sells as well. So historically, I think this is really undervalued, which is good. But again, this looks like it's probably a 4 book set, and Glenn the bookseller usually doesn't. Yeah, this is volume 1, so that even tells me more that it's multiple volume, and one of them is probably for CDs as well, because this one says 2 sealed CDs included. So I would just think that if you buy this, you're probably not going to get everything. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but that's the reality. It's the reality of it. We got Gary in the house. What's up, Gary? Good morning to the group as well. Current auction on eBay for Clone is at 42 plus shipping. Wow. So clearly there are people out there who want to pay up for that book, which makes sense because that book definitely has seen some pretty good value in the past. All right, so we got Anatomy and Physiology. This is a laboratory manual. All right, so I wonder if I can even sell this book. It says I can. Is that the same book? It looks like it. $2 though. Yeah. So this is definitely just an error from Flipmine. So basically the used price of that book was right around $2, so we're not going to pick that up. Memory Unearthed, $42 free shipping. Looks like that's the same price on Amazon. We got a little bit of an inflated buy box there. And you could have picked this book up for basically $15 almost the entire year. So definitely it's overvalued. What's super interesting is if you look in the past, this was selling for well over $100. And this came out in 2015. So I'm wondering why all of a sudden, even though offer count didn't really spike at all, I'm wondering why the price of this is so low right now. It actually could be, like, it could have been quite undervalued back over here. And one of the good news is notice that the used buy box was actually staying pretty high, right around like $90. But yeah, this is really fascinating how this was well over $100 when Amazon went out of stock. So this looks like it doubled or almost tripled in retail price, which is kind of crazy. Now, the thing that makes me think that this is undervalued, so I don't know if I'd want to pay 42, but if I would have found this book back here, I probably would have picked up a couple copies for like 16. The reason why I say that is if you go back to when Amazon was selling this, they're selling MSRP for between 30 and $40, and sales rank on this was very good. People were buying this, and also the use price was pretty high. Like, it was hovering pretty close to MSRP, which means inherently holds value. And if you think about buying it for about $13 today versus $13 back then I would still say that would have been a decent deal. Like, you could have bought this book back then for 13, and obviously you wouldn't make money, but you wouldn't lose all of your money is my point. So I think this is an interesting book because I think in the future, because this doesn't seem like a textbook, I think this is something that can totally go up in value. Maybe one of the reasons why it's dropped in price so much is that Amazon still is in stock on the paperback. It looks like they came out just 1 year ago, February 2022. So that's probably why the price of that hardcover is so much lower. That would be my guess. But I still think that you probably have a chance to sell it for for $60 or something if you were to pick it up for about 15. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna track this book. I think I would pick up a copy for 15, and we'll go ahead and do that. All right, there's Flipmine. I'm gonna go ahead and transition over. Let's do some Keep a Product Finder searching. Let me just quickly look at this. This is new. 1028. We'll do some Product Finder first, and then we'll go to the Keep a Deals page, and we'll see if anything looks good. So this is a very stereotypical August textbook season. Let's see if it has shown that same pattern in other Augusts. So August, September, a little bit offer count goes down, but price didn't really go up too much there. It is actually so cheap right now, though. It's right around $10. So there is potential with exploiting textbook season with this, although the pattern doesn't look too strong for me. Don't really want to do it. But what would you buy these books at? You'd basically be picking up for like 13 or 14. So not bad at all. What's up, Edward? Good morning. Do you have any tips on how to tell whether a book with a drop price is likely to recover to its profitable pricing? Yeah, I think the number one thing is going to be in the past. If you look at its historical data and you expand Keepa over the last, I don't know, 3 years or 10 years, has that thing held consistent value? And have there been points in time where it has dipped in price and recovered? So if you have basically what you're seeing in present day, you're seeing a price of a book that might be flat like this. Maybe it's at 50 or 60 bucks, and then all of a sudden it goes down to like 15. If you go back in time and you see something very similar to that, where it was selling for 50 or 60, it goes down to 15. It was there for a few weeks, maybe a month, and then it goes back up, and it does that repeatedly. I'd say that's a pretty good indicator that the book that you found is probably going to repeat itself in terms of history. All right, let's go to Product Finder here. So Keepa, I'm going to go to data. I'm going to go to Product Finder at the top. And let's go ahead and use some filters to find a book that maybe has just kind of steadily gone down in price with a repricing war. So the first thing I'm going to do is let's just go with like a 2.25 million sales rank. So we'll start with there. And for let's have Amazon be out of stock. Let's try to find books maybe that are not necessarily textbooks, although maybe a lot of them will be textbooks. And then let's go down to used. Let's say we want the current price to be, let's say we want it to be under $23. Let's say under 23. And let's say the 30-day average is a little bit higher than that. Let's say on 30-day average, it was at least, let's say 23, at least $23, anywhere from 23 to maybe like 45. Actually, let's not limit ourselves too much. Let's go 23 to 55. And let's go down to where we see root category. We're going to go and click books there. Specifically, we're looking for books. That gives 8,900 products, which is a lot. And I am interested in loose leaves today. So let's see if adding title loose leaf changes anything. No, it doesn't. Okay. So maybe I have to put that somewhere else then. So one of models. Does that show up there? Loose leaf. No, that doesn't show up either. I'm trying to see if there's a way that I can sort it by its binding. What about here? Loose leaf. Okay. There's 32 products. So let's look at loose leaves. I don't know. I love loose leaves. I sell loose leaves all the time for some good money. So let's see if there's any loose leaves out there that could potentially be profitable. For anyone who doesn't know, this is just going to be something that doesn't actually have a binding. It's not a hardcover or soft cover. You have to put in a 3-ring hole binder. And I love flipping loose leaves. I think a lot of people don't really look at them. A lot of people are sleeping on it. So you can see this has returned the product we're looking for, right? It had a value over the last 30 days of, it looks like between 40, like right around 40 bucks. And you can see we can pick it up for right around 22. So you can see this has gradually been decreasing in price. This does have textbook seasonality, definitely in August and in January. It looks like it definitely got a little bit inflated there. So obviously, if you were to pick this up in the off season for about 20 and flip it during the textbook season for 60, that would have been a great pickup for sure. The question is that a repeatable pattern that we can rely on? Definitely looks like there is tons of this textbook seasonality. One thing I'd want to look at is if there is a newer edition of this out, but clearly this book does go up in value. And the really interesting thing about this book is even in the off season when you could have picked this book up for about 20 bucks, the buy box was actually still right around 60 or 70, which is similar to what it was during textbook season. So that actually is a good sign. If the buy box is holding steady like that, it means that there aren't prime offers coming in at a really low price, like 20 or 30 bucks. And that's good news. So, buy box today is still 63. You could pick it up for 22. I would say if you're going to try to exploit textbook season, you really want to go wide. You don't want to go deep, in my opinion. I would say pick up maybe 1 or 2 copies per book that you tried on and just experiment with it. Realize that some of them are not going to work out. Probably most of them will, but not all of them will. So look, you could pick this up for right around like what? This would be like 27, 30. And there's actually only 3 copies until it gets up to 40 and then goes up to 50. So that is pretty good news. If we look at the offer count for books like this that are very seasonal, offer count is super important. So you want to make sure that that offer count isn't skyrocketing through the roof. It's right around like 23 right now. And if we look back at this current, if we look back at basically the same day last year is about 20, is about 21. So looks like we are about the same as we were last year. So that's also good news. But yeah, I just want to pick up more than one if you were going to try that. And to be honest with you, that's a book that I probably wouldn't pick up because I just don't do a lot of textbook seasonality. So it's not a model that I'm super interested in. Okay, really interesting. Look at this book here. This book made its way all the way down to $5. I would have definitely picked up multiple copies of this book at $5, but you can see 23 people are tracking this. I wasn't tracking it, so I obviously didn't get notified. But this thing has held some pretty good, insane value. Let's look at when Amazon was in stock. Amazon was selling this for well under what it's selling for now. Well, I guess over the few years after that. And obviously people are still buying this. Looks like anywhere between like the $30 to $50 range, maybe even up to 80 depending on the buy box. So right now, this is getting down to 21. Notice that this offer count is definitely creeping up though. So we are again higher today than we are in the past. So this is something I'd probably still pass on, even though there's potential. Okay, let's keep going. So we could pick this book up for about $20. I flipped this book multiple times. So back here in June, it looks like there's a little bit of a June textbook season, which is interesting. Why would it be June? I would think maybe for summer school. I don't know. That's kind of interesting. Paperback of this book is pretty expensive. Hardcover of this book is really expensive. That is good news for sure. We want those to be pretty expensive. And look how low this has gone in the past. It's gone to about $12.97. I think that would have been a good deal. And definitely this has showed historical data of going up and down in price per season. Good news about this book is that offer count overall is going down. So this book is becoming more rare. There's fewer copies on the market. Again, one thing we want to figure out, is there a newer edition? It looks like there is a newer edition. This is Gerald Walker. Yeah. So this is the 10th edition. Definitely, this is a book that is very valuable still. This just recently came out like a little bit over a year ago. So even though this book, there is a newer edition, the price of this is so high and there's so few offers for used offers that, in my opinion, I think this physics book is still going to sell great. So the question is, would I pick up a copy now that it's at 20? I'd probably go to eBay to see if we can send an offer and pick it up for like 10 or something like that. So is anyone selling this? Let's sort by lowest first. Let's see what we got. Yeah, it doesn't look like anyone's selling it for that cheap, but looks like you can pick it up for, let's go back here. What can we pick it up for? If that's 20 free shipping, I would definitely consider it. Okay, it is from an Amazon Prime seller, which is actually good news. So what you need to do is obviously buy this on a non-Prime account, and then you'd want to find some other offer on a different book so that this $20.85 plus the other book that you buy is over 25, so you'd get free shipping anyways. But yeah, I think that has some potential to it. Okay, let's see what else we got. We got Alex saying, my VA found a new book lead on a random website, sub 50K rank. Is that category worth searching more for my VA? Interesting. 50K rank in books is amazing, Alex. So you found a new book. That's really interesting. On a random website, is that category we're searching for? I would doubt that there'd be a ton of books out there like that. So it's kind of cool that he found a book like that. But I mean, sure, feel free to explore it. I'd be interested to obviously know what the ASIN is, but obviously you don't have to expose it to everyone here. But yeah, I mean, 50K is definitely a great ranking book. So I'd be curious to know what sort of margin does that book have? Is it like a 20% margin or 50% margin? What do I dislike about textbooks? I dislike the fact that mega sellers can come on with insane volumes of books at any time and just ruin the listing. That's one thing that I don't like about textbooks. So there's a lot more inherent risk involved in it because it's very easy for a few players to just manipulate the market with supply. And therefore, you could see a book that has great seasonality over the last 3 or 4 years, but then all of a sudden Rent-U comes on with 100 copies. It like just ruins the listing. Like there's no way that is going to recover, at least not in that textbook cycle. So that's probably the number one thing I dislike about textbooks. With that said, probably over 50% of what I sell are textbooks. So I definitely pick textbooks up. It's just that I'm definitely a little bit more cautious with going super deep on textbooks from experience of having bought and having gone deep and then being, having to hold the bag. So let's see. That's interesting. So I'm just going to keep going down here. This looks a little bit interesting. So this has been cheap in the past. It looks like it's selling for right around the $30 range, but still doesn't really excite me too much. Let's see. Okay, maybe this is starting to get there. So I actually am tracking this book. It looks like my tracker is right around $5, and it looks like it maybe has plateaued out right around 11, but this was up here right around $60 and then kind of plateaued after that. This has been right around like $20 year round. Definitely there's seasonality in August for this. So Looks like the used price didn't really jump up too high on this, but in the past, you can definitely see it's kind of ebbed and flowed, and you can see how that offer count changes every textbook season. Now, one of the signs as to why I'm not going to buy this book is notice in the past when the used offer count dipped a lot, that the number of offers that went off the listing was very high, very substantial. It was like from 53 all the way down to about 15, so about 35 offers went off the listing. In over time, our used offer count is trending downward, yet the spike downward in terms of how many people bought it is decreasing, which is not a good sign. So if we look back to last textbook season, where we were only at an offer count of 30, yet the lowest we got down to is right around 10. So we only lost about 20 offers. Despite the fact that there are fewer offers available, there's actually a lot less people buying it as well, which is not a good sign. What is the expected volume on books below 100K rank? 100K rank books should be moving pretty quickly. It's kind of hard to know off the top of my head, but I would say you probably would, like, a 100K rank book, you'd probably sell like 10 times a month if you're priced competitively. I would say that book is definitely going to move pretty well. It's kind of hard to say a little bit, Alex, because by the nature of my business, I find books that sell a lot less frequently. So I don't inherently sell very many books that are going to be that low of a rank, but also just, I know that you probably know this, but it's a good teaching point for other people, is just remember that also, sales rank is a snapshot in time. And if we look at this Theory and Practice of Counseling book, there was a period of time where the sales rank of this book was 68,000, and you'd say, okay, this book should be moving 10 times a month or more, but obviously it doesn't. So just remember that, sales rank is a dynamic figure that can move all the time and definitely does change. All right. So listening to music. So here's a book that has sold upwards of 40, and I'm thinking maybe we need to change our parameters here, because we're kind of finding books that have slowly, not necessarily eroded in price, although I guess kind of that is what's happening, is they're kind of eroding in price a little bit. I haven't found anything that I'm entirely excited about, even though I think there are opportunities with some of these books. Like here's a biology loose leaf, was selling for about 50. Come January, it's down to about $10. So it's actually the cheapest it's been in the last year, which is good. Although again, this is a book that generally doesn't hold a ton of value. So that's another book that you probably could make money off of, but it doesn't really excite me too much. Now here's something that is definitely more interesting. So again, here's another book that doesn't sell a whole ton, has sold in the beginning of this year and last for about $50, and now you can actually pick it up for right around $8.50. So this is something that would be a slow mover. If I were to pick something up like this, I'd probably only pick up one copy. But the good news is that this is kind of very consistently held price, right around $50. And I would bet this is an older book based upon that cover. So this came out in 2010. So this book definitely is over a decade old, and it's still selling. Now there is also a paperback. So I kind of want to see, is it the same paperback? I think it has the same title, but it definitely looks different. Does it say 8th edition? Is it the same? It is also Callister. So this book, you would think logically that the paperback is going to sell better than the loose leaf, and I would say it's probably selling right around the same rate. So it would depend on the offers here. If there's a ton of offers here, I'd probably pass. But if there's maybe like one offer, so it looks like there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 4 or 5 offers that are really low, and then it jumps up. So this is something I might take a gamble on. I might pick up one copy. It has sold for about $50, but I probably want to go more than just one copy there. Let's see what else we got. When you track a book, is it usually at a certain % off the peak price? How do you decide your tracking price point? I decide based upon past historical data. How low has that thing gone in the past? Like, let's say you find a $150 book that sells for that pretty much all the time over the last 5 years, but maybe it's dropped down to $45 about 3 times in that time period. Then I'd probably track it for 45, because historically that's how low it has gone, and it hasn't gone lower than that. So if I tracked it for 20, probably very, very unlikely I'd ever get notified for that book. So you're looking at books that have seen in the past dips in price where people factually bought it because it was profitable, and then you're just tracking it for those prices. So I would say look at what it has dropped to in the past, and if those prices were profitable, then track it at that price. Could you verbalize what your thought process is as you slide the cursor over the listings and observe the keyword graph pop up? Yeah, let's do that. What's up, Seth? How's it going? Only 5 likes and 20 people watching. I appreciate it, man. Yeah, let's go ahead and let's talk about that. So Gary's asking, when I move my cursor from one place to the next place, and I'm going, no, 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 no. Like, what am I looking for? I'm looking for something that seems to be inherently undervalued. So in my mind, I'm taking a snapshot of that lowest use price over time. And ideally, you'd want to find something that's holding great value and then all of a sudden see some dips. And so this is a great example of a book you would think that I would look at, but I'm not going to look at. And the reason why I'm not going to look at this book is due to the title. This is Fundamentals of Taxation. It says 2022. So I know that there's going to be a 2023 version of this book because books that have the year date in them are books that are going to have new editions every year. And so notice that offer count is going up and you can see the price is going down. So just from having looked at books like this probably hundreds of times, I just have recognized the pattern that this book is definitely going to probably tank in value. So I'm not even going to look at that book. But the premise of looking at something that has been valued up here and then seeing a decrease in price where it looks like it would be a good deal, that's something I want to look at. Like, this is not something I want to look at because the price today is higher than the price over the last 8 months. And you can clearly see that if you look at the graph. Like, from May to January, the price of this was cheaper than it is today. So how would me buying it today be a good deal? It wouldn't be a good deal, right? Because I could have bought it for cheaper back then. So that's something that automatically passed. Like this, automatically pass, right? Today's price looks like it's right around the same as what it was in the past. So I'm going to pass. Now, this is interesting. All of the used prices in the past are actually way higher than they are in the future, which makes me want to look at this book. So it's like, okay, wow, this thing was selling for over 100 last June, last August. Number of repricing wars. Interestingly, we actually see that the sales rank continues to go up, even though I see a lot of action in the used and new offer count. So I honestly think this was probably still selling, even though Keepa wasn't recording any sales rank drops on this book. And then you can see since then, this book has started a massive repricing war. And again, I still think people are buying this because offer count is changing. And now we're down to about 18. So one thing that I think is, I'm pretty sure this book has other listings because this comes with a Super Site Plus. And I'm pretty sure that there's going to be other listings of this book available without that access card. So what I would do is try to find, I'm just going to type in eSpace's 4th edition. And I'm pretty sure I've sold this book multiple times in the past. So let's see what listing. So these both say Super Site Plus with Sam. And it's interesting that there are two separate listings here with the same, pretty much almost the same title. Now, what's funny is that it looks like this is for the hardcover, actually. That's why. So here's the hardcover. Clearly, the hardcover price is insane as well. And back in last June, July, August, it was actually selling for some pretty good money as well. Trying to find if there's another loose leaf. So here's the 4th edition without that access code. And right now it's being sold for right around 40 or 50. Generally, again, logically, we think that if you're a consumer and you need to buy your book and you have the choice between a loose leaf or hardcover, probably going to buy the hardcover because it's just nicer to have a hardcover. So this is something that, again, I wish I was tracking because if I could have picked up copies at 17, this would have been great. And you can actually see that there definitely were some plays made by some online book arbitrage sellers because notice that here offer count went from 22 down to 17. So someone probably bought 5 copies there. Same thing here. Someone went from 18 to 15. So whenever you see drops, like smaller drops off a cliff like this, these are usually other online book arbitrage sellers who are getting rid of the inventory because they realize it's so cheap that they're going to make money. And think about how good they made out here. Like this person bought multiple copies. They bought at least 5 copies because we don't know, like those used offers counts, like that seller could have had multiple offers, right? It could have been Goodwill with 3 offers in good condition. So they could have bought if they bought minimum 5 books, they could have bought up to maybe 8 or 10. So think about how good of a deal they got there. They basically paid like probably $22 after shipping. And if we look at the most recent sales rank drops in that time period, I mean, they're selling that all day for $59.99, making a $16 profit, and probably getting the buy box if they're a prime seller for $69 and selling it there. So making like 100% ROI. So definitely that was something that was good. Look, so here's another point in time. Like this has been as low as $8.21. Obviously, in hindsight, would have been a great deal. So would I pick up this loose leaf? If I were, I kind of would want to find just a loose leaf only because I don't really want to sell it under a listing that has this super site code on it, because obviously it's not going to come with it. And you would think that the reason why someone comes to that listing is to buy the super site and the loose leaf, which is clearly not what's going to happen here. So I don't know. We'll see. And it looks like Amazon Warehouse is on the listing at 18. So it looks like they've been just trying to get rid of their copy, Amazon Warehouse. And it's possible that they've had multiple offers in stock. But I do think that if you bought this, you could probably still sell for like 50 or 60 bucks, maybe even more than that. I'm curious. I want to look at the offers page and look at warehouse deals and see if their prices changed. So they've only had one in stock, and they've gone from 69, and they're just trying to liquidate their inventory. But super interesting there. Let's see. Thanks for the reminder, Seth. Smash that like button. Let's go. We got Logan in the house. How's it going, man? Logan just hit 1K subscribers. Let's go. Congratulations, man. Huge milestone. Proud of you. And now we gotta, hopefully you got, I don't know how close you are to watch hours, but now we just got to get those watch hours up if you're not there yet already. But awesome. I feel like in the condition code, used offers are saying they don't include the code. Yeah, that is true, Seth. Is that pretty much all of the descriptions of the sellers basically say like this doesn't include associated media. Let's see if we can find any of those. Let's see. Access cards may or may not be included, right? Let's see if this person says it. Used items may not include. Yeah, so a lot of people say that. I'm just, from what I've noticed, Seth, from selling a lot of loose leaves, specifically on listings that have some other like, WebSam or access code, I just seem to get more returns because a lot of people just click the buy box button, I think, check out, and they don't necessarily look at that, even though technically it does say access code and supplemental material is not guaranteed. So there's that. Your parameters are Amazon non-listing. However, this last listing is Amazon Warehouse. It looks like Amazon Warehouse is a different search parameter from Amazon. Yeah. So the difference between the two, Denise, is that I'm specifically saying I don't want Amazon to be selling this in new condition, but that parameter was not set for Amazon Warehouse, which is Amazon selling that thing in used condition. So there's a difference between the two. Clearly, Amazon's not on this listing, because if they were, we would have a little yellow orange button, and that would be on the graph somewhere. So that's good. Let's see if anything on Flipmine has popped up recently. College geometry. This looks like that's come. But with that said, Seth, I definitely have sold loose leaves before on listings that say they come with the access code and said that it didn't come with it, and everything was fine. Okay, this is a really interesting book because generally the first 6 months out of last year, this thing was worthless, and then offer count just went down to 0. A couple of people made some big plays. So somebody went from 28 down to 19. So someone bought, what would that be, like almost 10 copies, and then another person bought another 11 copies. So I don't think that this would have spiked nearly as much if it weren't for a couple of online book arbitrage sellers just completely like cutting out the market and buying so many copies. But clearly you can see that after removing like 20 copies, price of this book definitely spiked, and obviously it worked out for them because in hindsight, right, at that point in time, it was so cheap that if you think about buying 10 copies at like 10 or 12 bucks, like you're spending $120. And if you're able to sell just a few of those up here at a super inflated price at like 100, then obviously you make all your money back, and all the other copies you bought, like it doesn't even matter. Like even if you don't sell them, it doesn't matter. But this is really interesting. Now look at this book. It's down to about 552. The good news is that last year the offer count was 33 at this point in time. It's 23 now. So it actually is lower than it was in the past. And it does look like this book does show some seasonality in January. Like look at this. This book went up in price in January. Now in the 2022 January though, even though offer count went down pretty significantly, the price didn't go up. So there is a little bit of inherent risk, even though definitely we see this ebb and flow nature. So again, would I go 10 deep on something like this? I wouldn't go 10 deep on this, but clearly this came out in 2000 and still selling to this day, which is good news. If it's still selling to this day, 22 years later, that means it definitely has some decent value. There's really not any possibility of this book getting any cheaper, by the way. Like, so, I mean, if you could do something similar and you might buy like a couple copies, right, like under $9, buy the good copies. I mean, then it goes back up to about 29 and 30. And this is probably the seller right here, Hickory Book. If I had to guess, that's probably the seller who bought those 10 copies. Because, well, actually, I don't know if that's true or not, because they probably sold out during textbook season. But one thing we could try to do is a little bit of storefront stalking to see if we can find what sort of books that they're selling. But yeah, I would say there's probably not a ton of, I don't know, it's not a ton of risk buying this book because it's so cheap. But what you do have to look at is the price of this book is probably going to hang right around $8 to $10 over the next like 4 months until it's textbook season. So this is something that I would not pick up. But see what Josh says. I used to teach a course using that college. Oh, I used to teach a course using that college geometry course. Wow, that's actually pretty interesting. So you've got some experience with that book. I mean, that book came out in 2000. So that book is definitely quite old. Let's look at this Laws of Evidence book. Let's look at this How to Win the Game of Chance book. And let's look at this. Why not? Texas edition. Biblical form. Let's see this go. So let's look at some books over here on. So we really haven't found anything definitively that I would say I'm going to be picking this up. But I think with that said, we found a lot of books that I think you could argue are still good buys. You would have to kind of exploit textbook seasonality for these, but could be it. So like this book here, 1992 in used condition. I mean, the new price is right around 42, and you can see that. Let's go to the new. There's probably just one seller with a bunch of copies. Yeah, they have 448 copies. 1992 is what you pick this up for. I think this would definitely sell for under $40 because sales rank on this book is great, and there historically haven't really been any offers. Like when someone did come in stock at $19.99, they basically sold out in like a couple days. So I think you could probably easily get like $35 for this book, maybe even up to $37 as a prime seller, maybe even more than the new price, considering that so many people are willing to buy this. Because you do see that used price actually does hover well above $40, and you do see the offer count go down to 0 eventually. So I would argue that people are probably buying that in used condition for just the prime benefit, right? Because it looks like this new seller is definitely merchant fulfilling it. Let's get April 21st and May 8th. So that's like a really long time, right? We could potentially get this about half a month from now, or from a prime seller, you get it in 2 days. So How to Win the Game of Chance. So I think someone is willing to spend $40-$50 for a bingo game. I feel like there's enough bingo fever out there that there's some 60-year-old out there that has invested in their Roth IRA and 401k for their whole life, that they've got boatloads of money and they're willing to spend 50 or 60 for this to get in 2 days rather than wait a month. I do think that's probably possible. So I would say not an amazing deal by any means, but I think if I made a YouTube video on that, I bet I would make money on that, even though I'm not going to buy it. But let's see this book. So this book has held some very good value. This is a 2015 edition. A lot of Texas books hold some pretty good value. Look at this. Price dropped all the way down to about $6.99 on January 22nd. So you would think that this has a January textbook season, but clearly it doesn't really have a January textbook season. It definitely has a July, August. So this is definitely a high school book. And if we go back in time, I would think that that's also July. So July, August, high school. Yeah, so this is definitely July. So this is a high school book for sure that is definitely going to sell well. So right now you could pick it up for $30, which is not really super undervalued. You could have basically bought at that pretty much all of the last 6 months out of the year. You would want to be tracking this book if you were going to pick it up. So, I would say arguably picking it up at 16 would probably be a pretty decent pickup. And the buy box is like 44 right now. So that's good news. But yeah, if you were here on January 21st and you picked that up you're one of these 4 people tracking and you picked it up, I think for this next textbook season, you'd probably do well. Now, one thing that does kind of concern me a little bit is that offer count is actually the highest it's ever been. And, increasing offer count is generally not a good sign. So there's possibilities with that. Let's see. Chris says, how many books a day do we buy from Flipmine? I would say it depends on the day. I'm not always looking at Flipmine. I do have VAs that cycle between Flipmine and doing Amazon flips. So when we are on Flipmine, I'd say on a bad day, probably like 2, and on a good day, probably like up to 5, like 5 solid books. And, like I said, I don't look at it all day. What you really need to do to be successful on Flipmine is you've got to look at it a lot. You don't have to be on for 5 hours in one sitting. You need to be on multiple sittings because you need to see the freshest inventory, which is why I'm really only looking at stuff that was just recently posted because that's all I really care about. I'm not really gonna look at stuff that was posted in the past because it's very unlikely that that stuff is actually going to still be there if it actually was a good deal, because people should be out there buying the book, right? Okay, the 500 world's greatest holes. This book is fascinating due to the fact that it looks like in December this spiked like crazy, and I'm curious if that is a trend that we've seen in the past. So that also happened last January as well. Last December. Okay, so this was $10 in the off season, spiked to over 100. That happened in 2021 as well. Although it doesn't look like there are very many sales. There's maybe a few sales up here, but I guess it went up to about 50. But this is something that, for whatever reason, is considered a seasonal book. So this is something that I might track because I mean, look how crazy that is in the in December, January, if you could sell it for that much. So what was this? It's $30 right now. I mean, you could buy it, I would say if you could pick it, like if you could have picked this book up for $8, like, and you could have picked out multiple copies, then that would have been absolutely insane. So I actually am going to track this book because it looks like in the last three Christmas cycles, this book has gone insane. So this has gone down as low as $6. So I think I'm going to track it for like $6.50. And if it ever gets to $6.50, then I'm going to pick up a couple copies because I think this will sell well. And also notice that in the off season, when it wasn't actually December, this actually at times had still a pretty good buy box price. So, oh, you can't see my screen. Sorry, can't see my screen. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, so this is the book that I came across right here. This is the 500 World's Greatest Holes. And if you just look at the past December, price of this went all the way up to about 100, well over 100, actually was selling as well. And if you look at this cheapest price in November, you could have picked this up for as low as $7. So this is a seasonal book for sure. That if we go back last 4,000 days, it looks like in 2022 and 2021 saw similar peaks in price. So this is something that I think would be good to track to pick up in the off season if it gets cheap. Like, notice it's been as low as like $5 before. That's where I'd want to pick this up. I don't think I'd be wanting to pay $20 for this or $15 for this. So if it ever gets down to that low, I would consider picking up a couple copies. I probably wouldn't go more than like 2 or 3 deep because it's still not guaranteed that that's going to happen. Although that is a great sign, and that definitely looks like there's, for some reason, that has December seasonality to it. 30. Okay, so we got materials for civil and highway engineers. $30 is an acceptable condition from your online bookstore. Definitely that's undervalued in terms of what a customer would have to pay if they wanted to buy it today. It doesn't really look like it's been selling too much, although again, offer count is changing. So I bet this book actually still is selling, even though Sales Rank is not recording drops on this. And in the past, like this sale was pretty crazy for $200, but in the past it has been as low as like between $20 to $40. So you're not getting an amazing deal. And look how crazy this is. Somebody probably bought a whole bunch here. So offer count went from 21 down to 4. So probably one of the reasons why this was so inflated is someone bought a whole bunch of copies. And you can see that also happened the textbook season before it. So probably the reason why the person did this is my theory behind this book, is that in, what would this have been, 2021, somebody bought a whole bunch of copies. Literally went from 13 copies all the way down to 2. So someone bought 11 copies, and look how crazy this book spiked. So then the book price went up to 170 and sold multiple times. So from this person's point of view, if they bought 10 copies at 28, they spent $280. If they just sold 2 of those 10 books, they would have made all their money back and actually started profiting. So they're probably thinking the same thing, like, hey, maybe if I do that again, September 2022, same thing is going to happen. It looks like it actually did happen, where again, they bought, looks like maybe 16 copies, right around $30. So they actually spent up a little bit more, and it actually looks like it didn't sell nearly as much. So they probably didn't do as well that time. So it'd be curious to see if they do that same thing again. But it looks like they probably did that as well back here. So interesting strategy. And like I said, that's what some people do, and it definitely can work. Although I'm not sure if I'm going to go that deep on one book. What's up, Bob? Good morning. Good to see you there. And let's see. Let's go back to let's look at some. Let's go back to Product Finder, but let's go ahead and get rid of that loose leaf search because I don't think that was actually turning out to find as good a stuff as I thought it would. So let's get rid of the binding loose leaf. So we got 8,000 products, and we want to filter down a little bit more. So let's say that, so we say Amazon's out of stock. Let's say the new price has to be at least $90 or more. That's going to cut out a lot of stuff. And then let's say, let's try to find something that actually has a 30-day buy box average that's still holding strong. So let's say the buy box average is at least $50. We got 126 products. I'm seeing if we can, let's see if we can go lowest ever on the price of the books. There's 3 books that are lowest ever. So let's see what these books look like. All right, so this is a really interesting book. Gary says, how do you interpret the cliff as buying multiple copies versus an IP complaint? I think, so if we go back to that book on FlipMine, that's a really good question. What book was it? I don't even remember what book it was. I'd have to go back and sit back here. The reason why I think that other book was not IP complaint, Gary, is because that drop off in used offer count happened the same time every year. So think about it from the perspective of some company. It's like, are they going to say, oh, we're only giving out IP complaints on August 1st? I don't think that makes sense, although maybe it does make sense because they're like, we know this book is about a spike in price, so let's go ahead and get rid of a whole bunch of copies. So I think if you see that drop off in price be very repeatable in terms of when it happens, I think, especially if it's before textbook season, I think it's likely just a online arbitrage seller just buying multiple copies. But if it's like a one-time large dip and it's not during a textbook season, I'd say that probably concern me a little bit more, for sure. Okay, so the reason why this book is interesting is because it has been very valuable. I guess I should say the lowest used price has been really high. Looks like it's sold one time here, even though we do see offer count changing. So you could make the argument that if offer count is changing, like even though it's going up, it is also at times going down. Like we went from 13 to 12 to 11 to 10. You could argue that it is selling, right? And then also, like, obviously this thing up here where sales rank is kind of going wacky, like clearly Keep is having an issue tracking this product. So that makes me think it's still selling. In the past, it's been cheaper though. So like it has been down there as low as 8. It has sold for more than that. The current price of this book is really cheap though, $374. So one thing I'd want to do is look at when this came out. So it came out in 2008. So if I think about it coming out in 2008, it was still selling in 2020, 2021, which is well over a decade after it came out, and it was selling for some pretty good money. So that's a good sign. Now, the other thing I want to look at is it says there is a paperback. And so let's see if the paperback is, one, the same book, and then two, if it's actually selling. So factually, that is the same book. Okay, a paperback, again, is probably going to sell less frequently than a hardcover. And notice that this is available for about $30 in new condition, and it is selling. And again, I would think that it's actually selling a lot more frequently than the sales rank is actually showing you, because look at the new offer count changing, like it's going down quite significantly. So even though there's only 2 sales rank drops here, offer count went from basically 16 down to 6. So there's 10 new offers that somehow magically disappeared from the listing, even though we think it might have only sold twice. And then we can see that, look, new offer count's changing here. So I bet this book is actually selling much more frequently than Keepa's suggesting. And again, like Keepa is not really tracking this book very, it looks like there are definitely some errors in the way that it's tracking this book. So I think it's selling more frequently. So considering the fact that I think that this paperback of the same book is selling for $30 in new condition, and we can pick this hardcover up for $374, I think this is probably something that I would still pick up. Definitely would be probably slower moving. The question though is how many offers are there down here? Because that's going to impact whether I buy. And it looks like there's one. It says, let's see. It's like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's like 8 copies really low. So that doesn't make me super happy. So if there's like 1 or 2 copies available, I'd probably pick up one. But because there's 8 copies of it, I'm actually gonna pass on that. But because those copies are really low. What is this? This is Absolute DC, the New Frontier. So I would say this is probably something that is a winner. This is something that I would buy for sure. So Absolute DC, the New Frontier. This came out in 2006. Obviously, this is DC, massive following. And if we look at the past, right, again, sales rank of this book is quite high at 3 million. But again, we do see offer count changing on this. So I do think people are buying it. So like here, offer count went from 16, 15, 14, 13, same thing, 14, 13, 12. And we see a little bit of like this sort of wacky wave in the sales rank. So I think there's errors here with keep tracking. And then we do factually see sales rank drops multiple times here at 85. So clearly people are willing to buy at 85. Here's a sales rank drop at 100. And then again, this book came out in 2006. Look at past historical data on this book. Has sold really well for north of like 80, like a lot of times up to 100. So I would say this is something that, even though the offer count is a little bit higher in the grand scheme of when this thing was selling for over $100, the offer count was actually higher. So I think this is definitely a safe bet. And you can see people have found this listing, right? 17, 16, 15, 14. So people have started to buy this. Most of these are probably customers who are actually like, dude, this is a great deal. Yeah, it says I am ungated. So it says I'm ungated here. I'm eligible to sell this, which is good. And let's see what we got. So we got 18. So we got 2 copies of 18, which is kind of a bummer. If one of these copies were good, I would say this is definitely worthy to pick up. Now, the good thing is that this is Goodwill. And a lot of times Goodwill under promises. So let's read the description. You have some stickers, residue. This says no dust jacket, some corner damage. Although I think that's just sort of a general statement on everything. So I honestly probably would buy this acceptable condition copy because it's from Goodwill. And this one says the box is ripped, creasing in bottom. So that one actually looks like it's not in very good condition. So you'd be taking a little bit of a gamble on a book like this, but I think this book will sell. It might take a little bit longer to sell, but I think this definitely would be profitable. Like you'd pick this up for, what would be on this, like 23? I think you could sell this for like $79.99 pretty easily, especially if you're going to be, I don't know what else my thought process was there, but let's go back to filter. So we filtered out a ton of stuff. So we went at least $90, and then we just said lowest ever on used price. So probably let's get rid of that. That's going to bring back 125 products. Chris says he always takes a quote unquote risk with Goodwill. Yes, you do always take a risk. That is for sure. All right, this box set is something that I would definitely pick up when it was down at this price. The number one thing though with these American Girl box sets is, one, you got to make sure you're ungated. So let's even see if I'm ungated in this. But then 2, you really need to make sure that it comes with all the books here. So can I sell this? Check alerts panel. So I have to log back in. Okay, so this looks like it's selling for in the $30 range, and this is definitely something that ebbs and flows in price. It's done that pretty predictably, and looks like during December this is probably bought out a lot for a Christmas gift, so it definitely spikes in price. Like look how crazy this was. Could have picked it up for 9 and then started selling for about 40 or 50. So there's some seasonality to this. Let's look back at January 2022. So same thing, we see offer count go down really low. Definitely saw a few inflated prices there. And let's look at the most recent January. So the most recent January actually didn't see too much of that, but if this were to come with all of the books in the set, this is something I'd probably pick up for $4 or $5. What's the prime at right now? Actually, are no prime offers in used condition right now. Buy box was 70, and like this person did sell out at 70, Medium Monkey. So definitely inflated the buy box pretty crazily there. But yeah, I think this is something that if it gets down to $5, I would pick up if it comes with everything, which is probably likely not to come with everything, but I don't know, we'll see. I'll always buy from Goodwill and have very few issues. Cool. Yeah, I also generally don't have a ton of issues with them either. So there are some times where I have to return stuff, but it's a lot fewer times than not that they're good. Rich Dad Poor Dad popping off. Look at Rich Dad Poor Dad popping off in price. I wonder why this is so expensive. Because Rich Dad Poor Dad is definitely a classic book, whether or not you like it or not. It's a classic book. And so it's gone down to, like, sales rank has... I'm just curious why this hardcover is so expensive, though, because this should definitely be mass produced. Like, look here at the paperback. Looks like there's newer editions. There's probably just multiple listings of this book out. Philosophy of Cash Flow. So maybe that's a different book there, but yeah. So this is what I mean. This is a book that definitely sells really well. So I guess it's just the hardcover is maybe a little bit more sought after. So yeah, it's interesting that this book can sell for up to $45, which is pretty interesting. All right, let's get rid of that. And let's see if there's anything else. Let's just see if we can find like one more book that looks interesting before we head off. And then we'll end the stream, everybody. So let's see. Got a couple questions here. Your seller ramp indicates IP alerts on Rebecca box set. Do you shy away from IP alert books? Not with, I don't give like any weight to seller ramps IP alert thing. I've actually never gotten an IP complaint on a book. I've gotten counterfeit claims back in 2021. I've never gotten an IP complaint. And the only thing that I would really look at is if there's a massive like cliff drop off in the new or used offer count. And I don't think it's likely that it was an online book arbitrage seller who was just buying a lot of copies. So yeah, I don't really take SellerAmp's IP alert much into account. Now, maybe I would a little bit more doing traditional online arbitrage, although I think from having talked to people who do traditional online arbitrage that a lot of them say it's not as good as IP alert. And even IP alert itself is obviously not 100% accurate or super extensive either. So I'd say the easiest way to tell is make sure that the brand's not on the listing, which most of the time brand's not on the listing for books. 2, make sure that there isn't a sharp cliff in the user new offer count. And then 3, make sure that there isn't just always one seller. So like if you see maybe there's like one new offer count and then you see the offer count jump up to 2 and then immediately drop down to 1 and then do that all the time, it's probably likely that the new sellers are getting IP complaints. Traditional online arbitrage is just non-book stuff. So that would be going to Kohl's, Walmart, Target, online and buying stuff that's cheap and then flipping it back online for like on Amazon for like a lower ROI. So what we do is online book arbitrage, which is buying books specifically. Other people buy a whole bunch of random other products, health and beauty, grocery, stuff that's not books. That's what I mean by traditional online arbitrage. Cool. Okay, this is an interesting book because I'm actually tracking this and it has hit my tracker multiple times, yet I haven't bought this. So this is A Natural Approach to Chemistry. This came out in 2016, so it's still fairly new. Obviously, this thing last year was selling for insane amounts of money. Like this was selling for over $160. It was as low as $72. Ironically, someone came on the listing at $25. Someone bought that listing up right away. And then since then, we've seen an increase in used offer count, and we've seen the price of this book absolutely plummet. So March 24th was 52. Now it's down to about 1456. So is this something that I would pick up? Well, one thing that I don't like to see is that even though the price of this book is going up in the off season and the offer count's going down, I feel like in general the trend is that the offer count every textbook season is getting higher than it was the previous year, which means that it's probably going to continue to happen, and therefore each successive textbook season is probably going to be less good. So I don't know. I might experiment with this. You can clearly see it's still going down in price though. There's a lot of offers at 17, including a prime seller. So this is something that I'm going to continue to just keep an eye on because I could totally see this book getting down to like $4 or $5, in which case I might take a gamble at like under $10 on this book and maybe buy one copy. But clearly during the textbook season, offer count does go down. People have bought this for a lot of money. So, but again, that's something that I'd probably just take I'd probably just buy one of something like that. Some exciting news I have for you, everybody. Victor Gallegos, he is the owner of a Facebook group, a seasonal online book arbitrage group. I just interviewed him a few days ago, and it was a really good interview. So hopefully that will be live early next week. So check that out. It's fascinating. He sells like Christmas books, and he finds stuff in the off season and sells it during the on season. Fascinating model. He did $500K last year in online book arbitrage sales. So definitely you should take a listen because he's basically at a 5x what I do. And he basically doesn't do my model at all. He just finds books that are winter books, that are Thanksgiving books, that are high school books. Like he finds a lot of the books that I'm not necessarily looking at. And so therefore I asked him a lot of great questions, and he came up with he dropped a lot of strong knowledge. So when that pops, make sure you check that one out. Last thing that I will say here is I do have a free Discord, and let me go ahead and put that free Discord in the chat if you're not already part of the Discord. I'm sure a lot of you are, but there's the Discord. I also have a newsletter, which I'm planning to send something out here somewhat shortly. So if you want to get on the newsletter and get an email, then feel free to look at any of those. Other than that, easiest way if you do want to contact me is you can just send me a DM on Instagram, and I'll do my best to respond. Things have been a little bit busy with school lately, and I'm trying to build this VA course with Steve Rakin. So I'm in the process of building that VA course, and I think it's going to be really good. I'm really excited with the progress on it. So definitely busy, but I'm super happy to be here, and I'm super thankful for all of you. So I want to say thank you so much for being here. That video of Victor hopefully will be posted by Tuesday at the latest. Probably Tuesday by the latest is what I'm gonna try to do. But yeah, it's super valuable. I think you should check that video out, because I'm definitely changing some aspects of my buying from that interview. So it's fascinating. Yes, you're welcome, Denise. No worries. Thanks for doing this. Of course, man, Scott. Yeah, you're welcome. All right, guys, I'm gonna go enjoy the day with my baby boy and my wife. Everyone have a great week. I'll see you next Saturday, 6:30 to 7:30 a.m. PST. We'll hang out. You can ask questions. We can do some live sourcing, and we'll head out from there. So, see y'all. Take it easy. Bye, Chris. Bye, Scott. Bye, Edward. Bye, Denise. Bye, everyone else, and have a good one.